welcome to my furnished hole in the ground. Got a lot of comments, so we'll jump right in. I'm making up a dungeon. There's some tough foes and tricky obstacles, so I'm sprinkling in some haste potions and some healing potions, mostly on the remains of dead delvers. I'm happy to remain flexible about how many potions to seed in the dungeon, but I'm just wondering, do you have a formula for, say, potential damage versus how many potions to lay into a dungeon plan? What's your approach to dealing with the balance on giving a player dufty foes versus giving them alchemical support to pull them out of a tailspin, so alchemical support to pull them out of a tailspin, so to speak? Well, okay, the first thing is that in my world, clerics and healing and stuff work substantially different. My clerics don't cast spells. They say prayers. And therefore they don't have to decide what prayers they're going to say at the beginning of each day. However, their ability to pray is scaled toward their, if they were on another existence, their ability to cast spells. All right. Second, I treat hit points as the ability to evade a fatal blow. Okay, so it's more about tiring and sweating and aching than it is about being sliced up and bleeding. I treat heal spells like Red Bulls, basically. Just an energy restorative. In my world, that works because we don't get into, I don't do critical hits as a rule, very, very, very rarely. And I don't do bleed outs. So doing Red Bulls. Now, I know there was articles done about, oh, drinking this spell with that, this potion with that potion, whatever. Well, this eliminates that in that regard, in that it's an energy, it's a boost. Now, do too many of those, and I might have you start feeling the effects of being buzzed, But therefore, to answer your question, I don't mind sprinkling them around. And haste potions, now that's a different story. I've always dealt with haste potions much like being on a meth or an amphetamine type accelerated pace. And you don't want to do a bunch of those, one on top of each other, because those are, I would, in my world, that second haste potion would have a cost. All right, you're hasted, but you're a little more vulnerable. The cost being fewer, a loss of some hit points on the second one. Now on the heals, the cures, whatever you want to call them, there could also be a penalty at some point for, too much healing. Again, with my principle of the ability to evade the fatal blow, until you've taken several speeds, I wouldn't have necessarily have a deleterious effect kick in. But too many of them, sure, too many of anything's bad. So how do I figure? Well, you can ask anybody that's played my wheel games. They go in with a bunch. If you don't do that, if you don't outfit them a bunch before they go in, let them find a stash of heals, potions or whatever. How How badly might they need them after they get done dealing with something in your dungeon is a good rule of thumb. Because, yeah, the suspense of getting out with those last few points is fun, but not as much fun as going in back to turning back around and going and killing some more stuff. Especially if it's in the furtherance of a higher ultimate goal, certainly. But that's just me. It goes with the ethos and the zeitgeist of my world. The way I look at healing, the way I look at clerics and that, so it works well for me. Another thing you can do is you can take the total number of hit points of whatever you've stuck in there, look at the total number of hit points of the adventurers that are going in to face in that dungeon, and then work out a ratio of how badly they might need to find these things. And don't just, don't have a ruined apothecary right inside the door, but you can always find some or trade for some or what have you. If you feel they're going to need them, well, then put them there. Unless you're playing for a TPK, you want to kill your party and therefore not have anybody to play with next week, go right ahead. It's a balance. Yeah, it should be perilous. Yeah, you should have some fun. But the only one dying is fun for is the DM, and then only if he's a little twisted. Okay. Dungeons in the jungle. How do you handle jungle travel and play? The jungle can be as oppressive and dangerous as a wandering boule. I once heard a DM tell the party to take 2 points of damage because of the jungle terrain they were passing through. Question: how careful should DMs be about improvisational damage like this? It's never fun to walk back damage in play, especially if tossing out take 2 damage for the creeper vines and spiky ferns, and that kills a PC. Well, there again, the previous topic of how lethal is it? How likely are they going to need first aid kits, bug repellent, whatever. And try to balance what feels, there should always be more points. The opponents, in my opinion, should always have more hit points. They should never be equal, the party and whatever they're going after. Because, well, all right. I guess if you were going after one orc or a single troll or something like that. But on the whole, all the bad guys versus the party coming in. That's the balance you want to look at. How do I travel in the jungle? Well, I did a pair of adventures based in a jungle that has fae that have turned evil, that are adapted to live in the jungle. They're jungle fae. In some cases, I'm not. In no case am I interested in making them chop through vines and lianas and creepers and stuff, and dull their swords with sap and stuff like that. That not the whole adventure, certainly. So, game trails, follow the river, build a raft. In this adventure that I wrote, the party can hack their way overland, or they can build a raft and pole their way up the river. Their choice. Both have their dangers. Hacking through the jungle is going to be considerably slower than pulling up the river. Each is going to have commensurate hazards. I'm not keen on just saying, okay, take a couple of points for the thickness of the jungle. I would, if the jungle's that thick, I might choose, and just the way I would do it. I'm not saying it's the only way, but I might choose to do it a little more abstractly. Keep in mind that if you're traveling through the jungle, particularly if you're going, you know, the adventure is go through this jungle to get to this temple or whatever. As a DM, keep this in mind. If you leave game trails, if you leave trails, adventurers will choose to follow them. Trails, and even, you know, rudimentary roads, can be watched. They can be trapped. So think about that from the design standpoint. If they're just going to randomly start hacking through impenetrable jungle, going from hex to hex, or however you structure your outdoor adventures, well then you have no idea where they're going. It's like the, you know, follow your nose thing. You're going off to see your grandma, and you see a red crab, and you follow your nose, and you follow your nose, and it's... So you're not... It's my opinion that design is not there to be as tough as you can make it. Challenging, yes. Impossible, no. What's the point? Certainly, heavy jungle has dangers. You might have, for instance, a few more wandering monsters in the form of really big snakes or some other jungle creature just blundering into the party. That's certainly justifiable if you want to, you know, use justification and logic for your building and for your attrition. I sometimes, rarely, use sounds like snapping a twig under the table or scratching or tapping my fingernails, sort of behind the screen dice roll, to get the player's attention from talking between themselves. If the astute player says, "What was that?" they get a benefit or want for a better word, or for want of a better word, an advantage in the altercation with whatever wandering monster comes into play. Anyway, I find it okay to use it on rare occasion when talking gets out of hand. What are your thoughts on players talking excessively during play? I have folded, and I am now playing my first 5th edition game this weekend, only because it's difficult to get a game out in the sticks, but that's it for me. 5th is final. The new version looks like a Disney cartoon, but I can't handle the see myself in the game motto. I don't want to see myself. I want to be a hardy dwarf warrior or a seasoned cleric, on which I am neither of these, but maybe that's just me. Thoughts on talking? Well, if the group is talking amongst themselves in game terms, to a point, let them, because that's what a group does. They pool their ideas and see whose idea is the best, or who goes along with whose idea the most. It's a pooling of ideas, a sharing of wisdom to come up with the best possible plan. Now, if it gets to be excessive in that regard, they just can't decide if Bob's going to go with his accent, you know, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. By all means, if the just rolling dice behind the screen doesn't get them snapped out of it, then give them something. Give them something to worry about. In this case, something that doesn't like them. I encourage the players to share information, share knowledge, and share ideas. when they get to arguing amongst themselves, well, it's time to snap them out of it. Gary told me about a thing he used to use called the Blue Bolt. And it just came out of nowhere and zapped somebody in the party at random and got all their attention. Wasn't necessarily a lot of damage, but it was like a, oh, okay, back at the game. I don't know how often he used it, but it was an interesting concept, and I liked it. What are your thoughts on players talking excess? Oh, okay, here we go. All right, that was the end of that one. Okay. Dwarf Warrior, okay. I'm all for that. Okay, I'd like to comment on the debate about how tech is changing how the game is played. I feel for me it has the opposite effect. The digital world has, in my view, supported my version of the game. As a 2E player, it's harder to find others who play my preferred version. I have an in-person group, but I also play or DM online games. The online world has allowed me to find like-minded players and for us to play over the net. The fact that I'm listening to your views and opinions online is another example. Without this tech, I would be surprised if I could have an idea of how you see the game, Tim, to reflect on your mind and other views or pose you direct questions. I see changes in how my own children play in the 5e world, although they have now deserted Hasbro to other games, and how they started was a very min-max metagaming way. But online content showed them the old way of playing, which is role-playing. So it's made them become more and more old school as they develop as players. So in return to my point of view, new tech is keeping the old game alive. Okay, new tech provides the means to keep the old game alive. Absolutely. I do it every time I play my Wheel of Blame game, which I'll do for any group of 5 to 7 players. That ponies up. I just got done with another one with the 8th time with the group in Okinawa, and we do more preposterous crap every time we play, which makes it so much fun. So yeah, there are advantages, granted, absolutely. I can remember the first time I played a turn-based strategy game online with people from literally all over the world. Freaked me out, and I loved it to death. Gave a new concept of global gaming, which is something I'm also going to come back to later. I just found this channel as it popped up in my recommended. This man reminds me of my DM. He's an old-timer, thank you, and talks with a similar cadence to you. It's funny, you're wearing that hat. We did a homebrew 2nd edition style campaign where there was a civil war going on, and the style was very much 1900s. The full theme was crazy cool. He had miniatures and the whole 9 yards. We were playing a party of artificers, soldiers, and medics. It was crazy cool, low magic. And was it fun? We all fell at a setting like Gettysburg, but we were able to stop the big bad opening something that would perhaps connect us in some way to the hells. It was a really amazing setting for a homebrew. Sounds great. Sounds great. These are the kind of ideas that only one person has. It's not anything that 7 people are developing simultaneously. And those homebrew campaigns, oh yeah, oh Lord, they're fun. I've heard tales of some of the most preposterous homebrews where the people just had so much fun it should have been illegal. They could have taxed it. Homebrews, yeah, great, go for it. Appreciate the honest commentary, even the parts I disagree with. Too many people in the world are afraid to speak their mind. Thanks for putting your voice out there. Well, you're welcome. I don't mean to preach. It's always in my opinion. And I don't even say that my way of doing something is better than yours. But I'm always glad to share how I do it. And, You can take it or leave it or modify it or ignore it. My comment disappeared in a tech glitch. I want to first recommend a show I was put on to. It's called Delicious in Dungeon. It's an anime where some adventurers decide they'll eat what they kill in a dungeon. It's surprisingly great fun, and the talks about dungeon ecology are something you might find amusing. Next, I got my copy of The Making of D&D, and it's a great work of art. I agree with your Disneyfication of D&D thoughts. I feel it has lost some of its aesthetics in exchange for safe, corporate, homogeneous content. Yeah, okay, cool. When I do this, I don't do this to argue. And there are a few comments that I'm ignoring this week that I felt were argumentative. And I certainly don't take to being told I'm wrong. Unless you can prove it and back it up, that's like telling your chemistry teacher they're wrong. Or your math, your calculus teacher, they're wrong, unless you know it. And in this case, you can't, because everything I do is the way I play in my world. And I've always said, if you're doing it differently and having fun, you're not doing it wrong. If your players keep coming back, or if you keep getting together to do it, whether which side of the screen you're on, you're doing it right. The current discussion over Disneyfied orcs and superhero aspects of 5e reminds me of some of what Gygax said about D&D back in Dragon 26. D&D has become a non-game because of so many rules variants. In other early issues of Dragon, he criticized spell points in a superhero campaign played on the West Coast. Yeah, superhero, not capes and flying, but all these incredibly buff players all of a sudden. AD&D was an attempt to rein in all those variants to be more in line with Gygax's vision. So was every supplement from Blackmore on. An attempt. Okay, now in response to that, WotC cares that people play insofar as people who play are more likely recurring customers. They are business first and foremost, and in all decisions and attitudes are aimed directly at making profitable products. Well, yeah, that's what they teach you in the Wharton School of Business, but some of the shit they've done recently kind of makes you wonder. Another response, they don't care if people play the game as long as they pay for the game. Yeah, because if they really cared if people played the game, they'd spend more money and time and interest in building campaign worlds and writing what we call modules, adventures. Because then that would keep them playing. But maybe not, I don't know. All right, now, another comment. Gygax was wrong when he tried to rein in West Coast play or when people wanted a different spell system. The creators of the game cannot control or limit people's tastes or imagination. Well, commenter, you're wrong. When a game is still evolving, and until AD&D it was still evolving, and after AD&D first edition it evolved some more, didn't it? But while a game is evolving, the creator has every right to try and shape how it goes, because they have the vision of what they want the game to achieve. Now, in the case of what was going on the West Coast, and it wasn't just the West Coast, spell points was one of the worst ideas I have ever seen. I have yet to be able to construct a scenario in my head that would not see spell points getting out of hand. Some of what was going on with spell points was doing exactly what Gary and Dave, the designers, who didn't want wizards dominating, it was doing exactly what they had set out to do. It was allowing wizards to dominate. It cheapened being a wizard. It glossed over the value of individual spells. It trashed game balance. Trashed them. Because now all of a sudden player characters are throwing spells that they're nowhere near capable of by combining all their low levels into one big one. Didn't work out very well, I know. I rode herd on that too. And the superhero stuff that was going on was level creep. So I would disagree with your assertion. I believe the creators of a game have every responsibility to keep it from turning into something they didn't want it to be. It's their game. You can play Monopoly any way you want. You can use free parking, though it's not a rule. You can ignore the auction rules. Play it however you want. But if you're going to play official Milton Bradley Monopoly, then you have to play it the way the rules are written. So don't go to an official tournament and complain. Well, it's not the same. See where I'm going here? Here we go again. Orcs are supposed to be lawful evil. Today, lawful evil is the new good. In response, that would be consistent with Star Wars, The Acolyte, as most of the recent episode. Another response, indeed, I cannot help but scratch my head at the identification with evil we see constantly. And now, another comment. Alignment doesn't make any sense because alignment is all perspective, and pretending that evil is the new good is just nonsense. If you want to play a fantasy game where black is white, go ahead, enjoy it, but stop saying silly things about good or evil. Well, you, commenter, could be a little kinder in your commentary. I can tell you if I think it's nonsense because I always say I think it's nonsense. You are not qualified to make that decision, snarky as it is. And yes, alignment does matter. At the very core, the very base, what is it we do? What do? We role play. We follow and we play a role. Alignment is very important because you ascribe, you try, you struggle to keep your alignment because alignments can give bonuses. Alignments can give negatives. Generally speaking, more bonuses than not. How you proclaim yourself to be is the alignment that you try to adhere to. You're playing a role. If you come to the table with John Smudleyfart, the budding fighter, and you proclaim, when you're meeting all the other newbies that you're starting to play with, you proclaim yourself. You let your tenets of faith be known, or not, maybe not faith, but maybe not politics, but your general worldview. And now, as the DM, it's the DM's role to make sure you play the role that you ascribed yourself. If at some point you start veering off, taking what you perceive to be an easier path, it's up to the DM to point out that that behavior is not consistent with. Now, alignment figures in the cosmic scheme of things about how well, what kind of standing you're with whoever you proclaim to worship, whatever pathway you choose to follow. All right? You start veering off your proclaimed, avowed alignment, and things don't happen quite as easily. More little odd bad things do happen. Why? Because your karma sucks. Now, in that regard, karma is not just good. Karma is don't take anything more there. Karma is good karma, bad karma. You choose to live in bad karma, you do. You get bad results. Okay, here's a question I meant to ask a couple months back, but kept forgetting to post the question in timely fashion. What was the rationale behind splitting Joe Fisher's excellent Hints for D&D Judges series of articles between the last Strategic Review and the first couple of Dragon magazines? Why was Part 4 of the campaign never published? Well, the rationale was that we were going to smoothly transition from Strategic Review to when would you expect your next one? No, you get a dragon instead. So it went 1, and then 2 and 3. I believe we never did 4 because he never wrote it. Or it got lost, because I certainly would have. But I believe it didn't get done. Now, Joe, if you hear this and you say that's not the case, well, let me know. But I believe that's what it was. Definitely happy to hear Luzaki's still with us. Thanks for clearing that up. A bit sadly is hearing cognitive memory issues, but I guess it isn't entirely unexpected at his advanced age. No, it's not. And I'm beginning to have things go not the way they used to. In fact, I got to speak with my physician next time about that. See if there's... Anyway, no. And it's not fun. I agree with your view on the Disney-fied thing. It's one of several reasons I never cared for anything WotC ever produced. It's good to hear Mr. Zaki still with us. Truly one of the great many people of our hobby. Yeah, Liv's great. Liv's a great dude. Great dude. He was at the first Gen Con I ever went to. And every other one in between, I think. Okay, here we go. I agree with everything you said about the direction of D&D. It's a shame they're making it Disney-fied. I have a question for you that I hope you will address in the future. On a gaming YouTube channel that I watched, The Gaming Gang, the host mentioned how he heard that Gary was not very nice in person. This was not coming from him, but just what he heard. I commented that I heard the opposite. From what I hear, he was always very nice and happy to meet fellow gamers, made him feel important. He was even known to play games with people that would show up on his doorstep. Someone else heard that he was nice from the 90s onward, and the bad stories came from the 80s. I find this hard to believe that he was ever not nice to fellow gamers from what I hear about him. The only way I can find the bad stories about him in the 80s being even remotely plausible is if someone caught him on a bad day during the time period where the Blooms were trying to screw him over. Needless to say, I find the latest trend of negativity and hate towards old school Dungeons and Dragons and Gary to be very disgusting. Some people are even trying to paint him as a sexist. Well, he was. And I'll explain that in a minute. I always looked at Gary as a kind of a hero because his game has meant so much to me my whole life. I'm over 50 now. I had some pretty tough times growing up, and D&D had such a positive impact. Can you please comment on this and let us know how Gary really was? Thank you, Tim, and take care. I never, ever saw Gary be unkind to a gamer unless he was running way behind between events at a con. He might have tried to beg off. I saw him at a Gen Con. He was walking down the hall, and I was going the other direction. He had 6 or 8 gamers following him. And I saw him a little later, and I asked him what that was about. He says, I don't know, I feel like an aphid, and those are just the ants waiting for me to poop out some sweet nutrients. That might have gotten a little frustrating. I know there was a period of time when the convention grind got to him. Have I ever heard of him snapping off at a gamer? No. I've not heard of it. Did he ever do it? I don't know. I try to be as nice as it could be at cons. And if I'm in a hurry and I'm running late and it's my fault, and I beg off and hustle down the hall past you, I might be perceived as being rude also. We can't all be Mother Teresa every moment, but I know Gary tried. Now, as to the sexist thing, I can't remember if it was in Early Dragon or a late Strategic Review, but there was a little article done by Brian and Gary about the maximum possible strengths that a woman could have, a female could have. And to be fair to Gary, he followed a philosophy about the inherent strengths and weaknesses of men and women that had as much to do with their musculature and their skeletons as it did anything inside their skulls. But he definitely, absolutely believed that a woman could not possibly be as strong as a man, could not do anything, and so therefore female players had to get negatives. They could never be above an 18, 20 or something like, very, very, I don't even know if they could be above an 18. So, yeah, on the one hand, he wished more females would play, but on the other hand, he wanted to put a burden on them. So it doesn't really jibe, does it? But, we've all got our flaws and faults, and every one of our heroes has a clay foot somewhere. And yeah, there is some negativity going on right now, but for those of us who play the old school, who gives a shit? It's just like all this Disney-fied crap. I can decry it, and I can bemoan it. Do I have to play it? No. But as a curmudgeon, it's my job to decry it and bemoan it and comment on it. That's what I do. I comment. I do commentary. I don't do instructions. I don't do play this way. No, that's not where I'm at. God. Next comment. Orcs are evolving into Klingons. Yeah, but probably not nearly as scary. Now, here we go on the random monsters we talked about last time. I don't know. Giant penguins on a tropical island just gives me ideas. They're probably lost. Their map wasn't waterproof. Gamers in management positions. That's a horrible acronym. GMP. Gamapo? I don't know. You lost me on that one. This goes to when you're rolling for monsters and you get something that's preposterous. I like that idea. It's cute. When I see blatantly non-native creatures in an unfitting place, I have to think transmogrification is in play. Dire penguins on a tropical island. You could have that hint at a magical portal located somewhere on the island that leads to a frozen area of the world. Now the players just need to find it or ignore whichever they want, but dire penguins sound fun. Even more than the group of dwarves riding dire wiener dogs I put into one game. Silly can be fun. Oh, absolutely. Ask anybody from Okinawa that's played with me about silly. Silly can get you killed too, but I mean, if you can't have a little silly. This illustrates the random, unbridled imaginations that we all have. Okay, I'm just making sure I had a lot of pages of cut and paste. I want to make sure I don't miss anything before I get to the last page. I want to make sure it is exactly the last page. Let's see. Bear with me here. Okay. Yeah, okay. It can be thought-provoking. But remember last episode or the episode before when I talked about something that takes the party off in a whole new tangent that has nothing to do with the story at hand or the clues at hand or anything like that? Well, here you see 3 examples of, oh my God, they're going to take it off on a tangent. Well, don't let them. Don't put the dire penguins there. I mean, Jesus, you can put in red granite chips on the floor somewhere, and because they're red and they're granite, somebody's gonna fixate them on. You can just say rock chips, and if they ask, okay, tell them it's red granite. But you see where I'm going with this. Don't give the party any more false avenues than they're going to create already on their own. All right, now, there's going to be a couple links on the end of this today. I was approached by a group I had no knowledge of and would never have been expected out of the blue to contact me. I was asked if I would promote, talk about, expose, whatever, AVCon. It's the African Board Game Convention. It's held in Abuja, Nigeria. Now, I went, I looked. They've got a Kickstarter. They're trying to raise $8,000 American to fund this year's convention because of tight economy in Nigeria. And if you read the news, you know what they're speaking of. This group also does other outreach to other gamers in Africa. And we're all gamers under the skin, and we all bleed non-reproducible blue ink if you stick us. I'm just, number one, I'm tickled to be asked. Number two, I'm tickled to find out that they even exist. Number three, I'm tickled to find out that not only are they doing it for themselves in Abuja, but they're also going around other parts of sub-Saharan Africa and setting up and establishing board games and places to play board games. And when you go to their website and you see the progress they've made over the last 8 years, I think you'll be as impressed by them as I am. And yeah, I'm going to kick in a few bucks. And I'll bet that if you and Don on his, I know he wants the contact information, pick this up and share it along. And if any of you watching this have your own video blog thing and want to do it too, feel free. I'd like to see Gamers in America push these guys over their Kickstarter goal where they need to be. Wouldn't that be great? Okay. Love the honor you gave to Lou Zocchi. Especially fun to hear a little story about him. Is there another unsung hero in the industry you think we should know about? Love the honor. No, not really. I do love Lou. I respect him. He's been in this business a whole lot longer than I have. I'll bet he's been in it longer than Tom Wom. And Tom's been in it longer than I have. So, I don't know. Now, I can't think of another person like that. I can't think of one person who's running around spouting off his face about D&D and the origins of it and claiming that he's the last one of the old people that contributed left alive, so it falls to him to make these comments and opinions known. Well, there's Steve Marsh, Mike Carr. See, who else? Me. There's 3 I know of that in some cases had more of an influence than he did in some ways. So if you run across that individual, take it with a grain of salt. He's trying to provide that he's the expert again. I guess that's all I got to say this week. So until we meet again, Dodada Gobi. Hello, and welcome to my cellar.
The curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs. Still quite a feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Last man around when them rates went down. Calling Gary in that Lake Geneva town. Hey Gary, it's an awful mess. Let me edit, we'll have success. D&D and Dragon Magazine. He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Magic missile, it's a mortar shell. Make it hit in the first level spell. Brought psionics to the game to attack that wizard's brain. ESR and fantasy, collection of micro armory, tight with tramp under a tree, high as could be. He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Curmudgeon